You know that feeling when you leave a meeting and replay it 5 times in your head, wondering if you imagined the whole thing. You didn't. Something happened in that room, and now you're the one questioning your own memory. That's not you being paranoid. That's the quiet aftermath of workplace manipulation, and it's far more common than anyone in corporate America or Britain wants to admit. Nobody screams at you in a modern office. Nobody calls you incompetent to your face. Instead, it's a raised eyebrow when you bring up a promise made last quarter. It's a calendar invite that mysteriously disappears. It's someone saying with total calm, "I don't recall saying that," while you're staring at the email thread that proves otherwise. This is corporate gaslighting, and by the end of this, you'll know exactly how to spot it in your own working life. Let's start with what it actually looks like, because it rarely announces itself. Picture this. Your manager assigns you a task verbally, no email, no paper trail. Weeks later, the deadline passes and suddenly it's framed as your failure to deliver, even though the instructions changed twice along the way. When you push back, you get the classic line, "I think you're being a little too sensitive about this." That single sentence does enormous work. It doesn't just dismiss your point. It repositions the entire conflict as a flaw in your character. Then there's the goalpost shift. You hit every metric they set for you in January. By June, those same numbers are somehow not enough, and nobody can quite explain when the bar moved or why. Or watch what happens in a group meeting when a coworker builds on an idea you presented last week, presents it as their own breakthrough, and if you dare to clarify, the room subtly signals that you're the one making things awkward. Credit flows upward and outward. Blame flows downward and inward. And it happens quietly enough that calling it out sounds petty, even though it isn't. Here's the psychology behind why people do this. Most of the time, it isn't cartoonish cruelty. It's self-protection. A manager who takes credit for your work is often covering insecurity about their own value to the company. A coworker who rewrites the narrative of a failed project is usually terrified of being exposed as the one who dropped the ball. Manipulation at work is rarely about malice for its own sake. It's about control, specifically control over how competence, blame, and credibility get distributed in a room where resources and promotions are limited. When someone controls the story, they control who looks good and who looks disposable. And the easiest way to control the story is to make you doubt your own version of events. This is where the damage becomes invisible, and that's exactly what makes it dangerous. You start rereading emails obsessively before meetings, not because you're careless, but because you've learned you can't trust the room to remember things the way you do. You start writing shorter, more hesitant messages to avoid being accused of overreacting. You start saying sorry just to clarify before questions that need no apology at all. That hesitation isn't a personality trait, it's a trained response. Over time, this erodes something much deeper than confidence at work. It erodes your relationship with your own perception. You begin to wonder if you really are too sensitive, too disorganized, too much. High performers are especially vulnerable here because the instinct isn't to walk away. It's to work harder, to over-prepare, to over-document, to become undeniable so nobody can twist the narrative again. That instinct feels like resilience. Often, it's actually exhaustion wearing a productive disguise. It's how sharp, capable professionals end up burned out and quietly convinced they're failing, in jobs where by every objective measure they are succeeding. So, let's talk about what actually protects you, because awareness alone isn't enough. The first shift is simple but non-negotiable. Nothing important stays verbal. Every assignment, every change in expectation, every quick chat that reshapes your responsibilities gets a follow-up email. Something as understated as just confirming what we discussed creates a time-stamped record that no one can quietly rewrite later. This isn't about distrust for its own sake, it's about removing memory as a weapon. Second, detach the outcome from your self-worth in the moment it's happening. When someone tells you that you're overreacting, you don't need to win the argument in real time. You can simply say, "I see it differently, and I'll follow up in writing," and leave it there. You don't owe anyone an emotional performance to prove your perception is valid. The calmer and more documented your response, the harder you become to destabilize. Third, find at least one person outside the situation. A mentor, a friend in another department, someone who has no stake in the politics, and say what actually happened out loud. Manipulation thrives in isolation. The moment you describe the pattern to someone else and they say, "Wait, that's strange," you get your reality back. That single sentence can undo weeks of self-doubt. And finally, remember this: your discomfort in these moments is not evidence that you're difficult. It's often evidence that you're paying attention. The people who never notice these patterns aren't calmer. They're simply not looking closely enough. Trusting your own read on a situation, even quietly, even privately, is the first real act of resistance. If any part of this sounded uncomfortably familiar, you already know it wasn't hypothetical. So tell me in the comments, what's the moment at work that made you start questioning your own memory? Sometimes, just saying it out loud is where you start taking your reality back.